All right, so hopefully you have watched that clip of the killer rabbit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. If you have not, this silly little game I've made might not make that much sense. So what I'm going to do first is just give you a little bit of a walkthrough of the code, and then after we do that, then we're going to talk about how we can improve this code. So let me run this thing right now and just show you what happens. So it's a really dumb little game here. It says, look, cute little bunny rabbit, and shall we use the holy hand grenade? And I'm going to say no. And one of my knights died, and I say no again. And finally, if I say yes, you can see that I count down, toss the grenade, boom, and the rabbit has been defeated, and that's how I win the game. So it's when I use the hand grenade. I'll run it again, and I'll lose the game just so you can see what happened there. So if I say no and no and no repeatedly, and now I'm down to one knight, and I say no, and the rabbit kills the very last knight, and the game is over, and then I lose. All right, so that's the game. So just a little walk through the code, right? How does this work? So when the game starts off, all right, I decided that I set the number of knights. I have 5 knights in my group, and there's a rabbit, and I made a Boolean variable called rabbit is alive and set it equal to true. So those just store some values. The very first line of output you see is this print, look, a cute little bunny rabbit. You see it there. And then we get into a loop because you can see that the exact same each turn in the game, it's still the same thing. It's a question. Should we use the hand grenade? You say yes or no, and it just keeps repeating. All right. So here's my loop, and I used a while loop for this because I don't know how many times it's going to iterate necessarily, and I'm checking for 2 things. One is this loop is going to the condition to do the code, execute the code inside the loop is going to be if the rabbit is alive and the number of knights is still greater than 0. So the very first thing that happens on my turn is I use this input function, and it just prompts, shall we use the holy hand grenade? And I can either type in yes or no, and it takes my response and it stores it in the answer function. If I type in yes, then this use grenade Boolean variable gets set to true, and then we'd skip down to this next block, and if use grenade is true, then I toss the grenade and boom, and then the rabbit is no longer alive, right? And if the rabbit's no longer alive, then when we go back up to the loop, we check. Since this part of the statement is false, we will exit the loop and execute this code down at the bottom, right? So this is the code and then how do you decide if you win or lose? Well, if I have some knights left, then I must have won. And if I don't have any knights left, then the rabbit has defeated me, all right? So I have different output based on that. I could go through here and, right, so that was if I say yes, well, let's suppose I say no. So if I say no, the answer is not yes. Something interesting here. It actually, if you think about what I did here, if you say yes, you'll use the grenade. Because I just use an else here, any response other than Y is just going to be considered a no, and I won't use the grenade. And that's probably something I should work on in a later version of this to fix that up. But so if I say something other than yes or Y, then it subtracts a knight from my number of knights. It prints a message that one of them's been killed, and it tells me, right, how many are left, and it goes back up here. And eventually, if I keep saying no, the num knights get set to 0, and you go up here, and the num knights is no longer greater than 0, so we skip past this while loop and come down here, and right, and this would be the output. All right, so that's how the program works. So not a real exciting game, but there are some good logical concepts in here, and it demonstrates. I guess this program has plenty of room for improvement. So in the next couple videos, what I'm going to do is improve this code. And the maybe big picture lesson I want you to think about as I go through and improve the code is I want you to see how programming is, it's going to be incremental. That is, I don't ever start at line 1 and just type down to the bottom. And then good, my game is all done. No, I get little parts working, and then I add a feature, and then I add another feature, and then I keep doing that, and eventually maybe I consider a program done. And then the other thing I want you to see is that my development is going to be iterative. And by iterative, what I'm saying is kind of goes along with incremental, but I guess I'm going to use this in a different sense and say, my program is not going to be perfectly refined on my first go, right? So the first pass, things might work approximately the way I want, and then I have to fix errors, and then I get another idea, and I try something new, and it works close to the way I want, and so I have to edit and debug and rearrange code to get to where I want, right? The final to get to where I want what I want the final product to look like. All right. So now that you have had a walkthrough of the code, what I think you should do is run the game, play the game a couple times, and just as you play the game, look at the output over here and look at the code over here and make sure you understand why each line of output gets printed when it does based on your actions over here. All right? And when you feel comfortable that you understand this code, start up the next video and we'll start adding some features to make our game a little bit more interesting.